Welcome back everybody. In this episode, we review and add on to the Adventure King's Bush Mechanic Toolkit. For $150, it's pretty good value. However, I think there's a few little bits and bobs you can add on to. Come along and we'll show you how. Now for a number of years, we've been traveling around with my trusty old socket set I bought about 20 years ago. My ratcheting spanners, some screwdrivers, bits and pieces in a throw together kit I pull out of the shed and chuck into the back of the car or the camper when we're going onto a trip. Now every time there's a sale on, I peruse all the specials, trying to find a toolkit that ticks most of the boxes, that's compact enough you can just leave in the back of the vehicle and has most of the tools you need for roadside repairs or any other little maintenance things you might come across on a particular trip. And if you're like me, you want to keep it at a reasonable budget because it's sitting in the back of the car and you're hardly ever going to touch it. And that in itself poses a bit of a problem because all the budget toolkits are obviously a little bit of a compromise. And while it sounds a little bit silly, my main objective has been trying to find an affordable budget toolkit that has a set of ratcheting spanners, because that makes life so much easier when you're getting into those tight, hard to get to places where you just can't quite reach in and you haven't got a lot of room to move. And so this 174 piece Adventure King's Bush Mechanic Toolkit ticked that box and a whole lot more. So let's firstly go through what's included in this standard kit, and then a few little inclusions I think you should add to it to make it a really good road trip and camping bush mechanic toolkit. So firstly, the kit comes in this storage bag, which is of a reasonable size. It's enough that you can put some extra tools, parts, or other bits and bobs in. And obviously it has a zipper so you can secure all your tools. These carry handles, which Velcro together, a few little pouches on the front, and it seems to be reasonably durable. If you're going to give it a hard time, it will probably start to wear through on the corners and tear a little bit, but we're talking about a budget toolkit here, and I think this does the job perfectly. I prefer something like this than a hard case toolkit, which I was originally looking at, because you can actually add things to it. With a hard case toolkit, if you get any other tools you want to take along, you kind of have to put it into a bag or put them separately into another bag. So this keeps everything all nice and tightly together, so you can just pick it up, move it around and put it in whichever vehicle or camper trailer or caravan that you need for any particular trip. Opening the storage bag up, there's a number of tool pouches which separate some of your tools out and helps to keep it reasonably organized. And while these do a fairly good job at that, there's a few compromises I'll touch on as we go through this. I will also mention that this particular toolkit is purely metric. So if you've got a four-wheel drive or vehicle that has a lot of Imperial fixings in it, this kit probably isn't for you. You're better off buying a kit that has both metric and Imperial sockets, spanners, and the primary tools that you need to complete repairs on the road. So the first pouch reveals your screwdrivers. They're fairly decent quality, reasonably heavy. They've got a 1/2-inch drive on the top, which is pretty handy. That also means you can hammer them if you need to. However, I'd try to avoid that. They've also got a magnetic tip. The quality feels all right. The grip's fairly decent with a real decent sort of texture on the handle, so you can get in and get those hard to get bolts and fixings out when you're on the road. So I would say for $150, this is perfectly fine. Also, when it comes to the Phillips head screwdriver sizes, you get a 1, a 2 and a 3, which again gives you a good chance of freeing a whole variety of screw sizes. And they neatly store away in one of the Velcro pouches, keep it all nice and tidy. Next we have the spanners, and this is what really enticed me into this particular kit. Because you have a range of ratcheting spanners that make life so much easier. The gearing on these isn't particularly fine. However, for a kit you just stash in the back of the vehicle, I think these are perfectly fine. The sizing you get in the kit ranges from an 8mm through to a 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 17 and 19. You also get these larger spanners, which aren't ratchet, but they're 21 to 24, and they've obviously got an open end and a ring end. But I think the compromise here with this particular kit is that none of these tools come in a roll, because I like to keep all my tools nicely organized. There's nothing worse than trying to fiddle through all your tools when you're stuck on the side of the road and trying to do a quick fix and you can't find that 10mm or the 13 or whatever. So to make life a little bit easier, I've bought this spanner rack so you can at least organize the ratcheting spanners all nice and neatly and slip them back into your tool bag. Now, how much neater does that look? It keeps everything all nicely organized, and it even accommodated the larger spanners out of the kit also. It's almost like it was made for it. Next, we have a whole array of pliers, shifters, and other various tools. So you get this reasonably large, heavy-duty shifter, which is okay. Some vice grips, which are always handy to have. Just your standard stumpy nose pliers, needle nose plier, side cutters, and these handy circlip removal tools. And not only just one tool, it's got 4 different heads you can put on it to suit all your various circlip sizes. All the pliers move nice and freely. I've bought a whole pile of sets that are binding up and they're quite hard to use, which does get quite frustrating. The grips are okay. My one comment is that these don't come in a pouch at all. They all sit loosely inside this storage bag. However, we've got this leftover pouch from our spanners, so they can all go safely back in here. And with the circlip pliers and all the various head attachments, I'm going to put them in this Ziploc bag to keep it all nicely organised and to make sure that we don't lose those little tiny pieces when out on the road. Just like so, it keeps it all nice and tidy. Next in the kit is a little bit of electrical gear, which is fantastic because you often have a few little wiring modifications to make on the way if something should fail and you need to quickly get back out onto the road. So you get these cheap wire strippers, which aren't fantastic, but they'll do the job. They're your typical crimping tool ends and then the wire stripper underneath. I prefer to use one of these, but again, for a toolkit that's just stored in the back of the vehicle, that's perfectly fine. You also get a container with little spade connectors, fuses, and bits and bobs that'll get you out of trouble. You get this little wire brush, which is handy just to clean surfaces up, but I think there's a few things that need to go into this side of the kit to make it that little bit more workable. Firstly, let's put in a little test light. While you can carry around a multimeter, this test light will get you out of trouble in most instances where you can test the circuit, make sure there's voltage coming through and get you on your way. If you want to put a multimeter in, that's fine, just takes up a little bit more room, and this thing was like $5. So it's a pretty cheap and easy accessory to put in your kit to help you out when you're stuck with those electrical gremlins on the road. Next, every kit needs to have a whole pile of zip ties. So we'll pop them in the kit. They're going to get you out of trouble, whether it's electrical, tying up some wiring, or other little failures where you need to tie things up and get them out of the way. Zip ties come in handy for everything. And of course, you want some electrical tape. So buy some good quality electrical tape, such as this Nitto product, pop it in your toolkit. We probably actually need a little pouch for these, but don't worry, I've got that covered coming up. Next are the sockets, and the range here is pretty good, I must say, and it's reasonably heavy duty, being all 1/2 inch drive to make it nice and simple. So you have a range of standard short sockets like so, and the quality, I must say, isn't too bad for a cheap kit. They feel nice and heavy and sturdy, and I think they'll do a fairly good job. In the standard size sockets, you have a range of sizes going all the way from 8mm up to a hefty 32mm with a few missing in between that you wouldn't ordinarily use. You also have a range of deep sockets like so, And again, they've got a reasonable weight to them. The quality seems pretty good with this little grip that runs around the center, and they range in size from 10 all the way through to 19. Now, one thing I'm going to add from a deep socket point of view is a 19mm impact socket, because that's the most common socket we have for all our wheel nuts on our vehicle and our camper trailer. And the beauty of that is I can use it with my impact driver as well, which I typically take along on trips just as a bit of a backup. And also included with the deep socket set is a 16mm and a 21mm spark plug socket, which will come in pretty handy for those with petrols. Those of us with diesels, these will just be used as we need to, but they're handy to have in any case. You also have this small half drive extension, which isn't too bad. However, I think it would be a good idea to put in a larger extension to complement the one that comes in the kit, just to get you out of trouble and to get to all those hard to reach places. I find particularly on a four-wheel drive, you use this more often than not. So that's definitely something you should add to the kit yourself. You also get this handy universal joint to get around all your tricky corners, a breaker bar, which is fantastic so you're not destroying your socket wrench, and the 1/2" drive socket wrench itself. It's got the flick lever for forwards and backwards. Again, the gearing's okay, it's not too fine, but that would be what you expect in one of these kits. It feels reasonably solid and the grip's okay, so I think it will do a fairly decent job. But if you're anything like me, this schmozzle will drive me absolute nuts, particularly if you're out on a dirt track and you need to pull all these sockets out to find which is which. So I've bought these rails, which will put the sockets on and keep it all nicely organized from smallest to largest for both the standard size sockets and also the larger deep impact sockets as well. So I'll put these on and I'll show you how much neater and tidier this setup really is.
A few moments later.
Now, how much neater is that? You can simply pop it into the storage bag and these are ready for when you need them, and it keeps everything all nicely organized again. It's just these simple little things. These are Sid Chrome ones and these are blue, so they match in with everything as well. Now, the best thing is we've got a leftover pouch which we can put all our electrical gear in to keep it all nice and tidy as well. Now, the last few pieces left in the kit, which are pretty handy to have around as well, are a full set of Allen keys, a set of punches, and a cold chisel, which would be really handy to be honest, and most kits don't include these. A hacksaw, a file which also comes in handy for filing down any bird ends or any other damage you might come across so that it's all nice and safe. A good old hammer and a jemmy or a lever bar, which would always come in handy as well. All of these you would just stash in the bottom of the storage bag to keep it all nice and tidy, and I would layer it so that the things you're accessing more than others are on the top and you work your way back down through the bag to keep it all nicely organized. Now, there's a few extra things I'd probably throw in just to make life a little bit easier, and you'll probably have a few of your own, so put them down in the comments below to help anyone out. I'm trying to keep this fairly simple and budget friendly. The first thing would be some nitrile gloves. You're out on the road, you're playing with grease, and you've got to drive home. I never wore gloves until recently, and these are a game changer. You can get dirty, take the gloves off, your hands are still nice and clean, and you don't end up with grease all over your steering wheel, your controls, and other bits and pieces in your vehicle. And given that you'll probably be working on the ground, in the dirt, in the grass, it's a really good idea to have a magnetic dish. That way, all the nuts and bolts you take off, you can put in here. If you happen to bump it while you're rolling around on the ground and it tips, you're not going to lose them all inside the dirt and the grass, and you can make sure you keep it all nicely organized and you've got everything for when you need to put your vehicle back together. Now, a few months ago, I also got this awesome Milwaukee ratchet drive. It's only a 3/8 drive, so I'll have to get an adapter, but I'd certainly be packing something like this along with my impact wrench if we were doing a really big trip, and potentially an angle grinder as well. Also put in some torches. It's a good idea to have a little headset such as this, or these are really good as well. And also, depending on what battery powered stuff, you've also got the work lights, which go with your Milwaukee 12 volt range, and Ryobi with their 18 volt range also have a good series of work lights as well, because quite often you're working into the dark and you need to have really good lighting. And there you have it. For under $200, you can have a really well set up toolkit, which will handle most situations you get onto traveling out there in the bush, on a road trip, or whatever you might get up to. I really think this is one of the best value kits around. Having the storage bag makes it nice and flexible. You can put things in and pull things out as you need to. And these modifications in organising all the tools out will be a lifesaver. So if you're considering this kit, I'd certainly look at these upgrades, at least to organise the spanners and the sockets and to keep everything all nice and tidy. I'll put a link to this particular kit in the description and a full list of other bits and bobs that I've added to it as part of this video. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. We do reviews from time to time, and I do a lot of research in finding something that's the best bang for your buck and capable of doing whatever I need it to do. As I said earlier, if you've got any comments or additions to this kit that someone might want to consider and add to, please put them in the comments below. Like this video if you enjoyed it, shared it around as it helps us greatly in YouTube land, and most of all, subscribe to our channel. We've got a lot of content coming up, including further camper mods. I want to renovate a caravan. We're doing some four-wheel drive and camping trips away, and everything else in between, including some DIY stuff around the house, in the shed, around the pool area, and anything in between. Anyway, I've got a few other projects to get onto, so as I always say, get out there, stay safe, have fun, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.